This is a Balanced Brain podcast with your hosts, Melanie Nicholson and Sean Clift.
Welcome back to the Balanced Brain podcast. My name's Sean Clift. I'm joined again by my good friend and co-host, Melanie Nicholson. Melanie, how are you?
I'm very good, thanks, Sean. The sun is shining bright through the window and
it looks iridescent down there. It's a bit overcast up here in Brisbane. We need a bit of rain. Hey, another fantastic episode. We've got another guest joining us tonight. Melanie, another one of your contacts. I think it's going to be a spiritual conversation. So, Mel, I'll throw to you to introduce our guest.
Yes, it's great to welcome Lana to the podcast. And we're going to talk all things spiritual, but I'll throw it over to Lana to start off with what you're doing at the moment in terms of helping people.
Hi, Mel and Sean. Thanks for having me here, guys.
Hi, Lana.
So basically, I'm a counsellor, number one. But the spiritual side of that is I also read tarot cards, which I've been doing for about 20 years.
Wow.
So the counselling is actually more recent for me. Yeah.
So what's your qualifications, Lana? You've got university qualifications in counselling?
I do, yeah. So I started off doing a Bachelor of Social Science a few years back. I did majoring in psychology and sociology. And then I did a Master's in Counselling, which I recently finished a few years ago now, actually. Yeah.
And so what sort of work are you doing now professionally?
I'm a counsellor. I've actually just started my own practice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And so what sort of, things do you focus on anything? Or are you getting any particular kind of patients or things like that?
Look, I'm trying to keep it sort of open and general and open to everyone at the moment, especially just starting out on my own. Prior to that, though, I have worked in the mental health industry for about 5 years, at least. So people from all walks of life, really. A couple of years ago, I worked with mostly women and children and families, helping young kids as well. So I really love that. So that's something I've always felt connected to. Having children of my own, being a mum, I definitely felt that.
So how many, you've got 3 children?
I do, yes. 2 girls and a little boy who's 18 months old. So they keep me busy.
I'm sure they do.
Busy. Yeah.
And Lana, you had your latest bub like October 2021.
That's right.
Yeah, that was a pretty crazy time.
It was. It sure was. It was a very interesting time to have a baby, or interesting time in general. But yes, having a baby and doing the hospitals and all that sort of stuff in the midst of, COVID and all the lockdowns and everything, it was interesting is a good word.
Yeah, sure, would have been.
And you've been doing tarot long before you got into counselling. So how did you start with tarot? Tarot. I've got that pronunciation. Start with tarot. I do tarot cards myself, but I put some. How did you start with tarot, and how did that lead to counselling?
Yeah, look, I think it's always been an interest of mine. I've always been a spiritual person. I'm trying to pinpoint an exact time, but I think it's since I was born, really. Tarot I actually got into when I was about 15 years old. My sister gifted me my first tarot deck at 15. And I think she always knew I was drawn to the esoteric and spiritual things in life because I had spiritual experiences from a very young age. So I was always very drawn to it, and it sort of evolved from there. The whole spiritual path, I think, has evolved from there for me. But tarot is just something that I just absolutely loved. It's lots of fun, and it was something to play with. But now it's become even more than that. It's become quite a powerful tool that I can use, and it's, reading tarot for people is quite similar to counselling.
What's the similarities?
Well, basically, it's a form of therapy in a way. You're sitting down with someone, having a really personal chat, a really personal conversation with them. They're telling you their, challenges or problems that they're having, or where they'd like some help in their life. And in that way, it's pretty much counselling, except I've got an extra tool under my belt that I can use, and give those extra messages and really tap into someone who's already in that spiritual frame of mind, and very open-minded and more sort of willing to make those changes, I guess, when their messages are presented to them more clearly or in a different way.
So as far as tarot is not exactly, it's a way of guiding people, or is it a destiny? What's your thoughts on that?
Look, that's a good question. It's both. Absolutely both. I remember having a reading done by a beautiful old woman years ago, and she said to me, everything here, before she even started reading my cards, she said, everything here is written in sand, meaning that if you stay on the path that you're on right now, everything that you see here today will come true. But you have the power. You still have free will, as we all do. So if you don't like what you see, you have the power to change it. So it's a bit of a glimpse into the future if you stay on the path that you're on, but you absolutely have all the power to change it, which is beautiful. So I think a lot of people might have that misconception that, I'm going to read your fortune, that's it, it's solid, That's not the case at all. So that's why I love tarot, because it is a wonderful tool. We can ask any sorts of questions about the future or, the present moment. Where can we change things in the now as well? So it has all sorts of uses, and people, different tarot readers have different styles and use it differently as well. Yeah.
Lana, it's fair to say there's been an explosion in the topic of spirituality, and including card reading and oracle cards.
Absolutely.
For years, particularly over the last 3 years. What do you think that's about?
Look, I could get, there is the astrology side of it. We're into a new age, quite literally, the age of Aquarius. So that's a very spiritual and humanistic sign as well. So we're in a new age, I think, as a society, as a world, but also I think people are sort of getting a bit fed up. I think we're evolving. I think everything that's happened in the past few years, people have sort of, had to make a really, really serious life choice about, and, it's made us all sort of wake up a little bit and make some really heavy choices for ourselves, And I'm talking about, internally, mentally, the world is not quite what we thought it was, is it? Things have really changed dramatically. So yeah, I think people are looking for answers. They're looking within rather than, seeking externally. People are starting to look within and realize, actually maybe I have the answers within.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point. I mean, I would have called myself completely atheist a couple of years ago. And I guess I've sort of changed over the last period of time, to tap into that more spiritual side for myself too. I don't really sort of follow any, orthodox religion or any sort of religious teachings or anything like that. But for me, I have done that over the last couple of years, looked within myself, really started to meditate. And I guess a lot of people are finding that kind of spirituality. Is that something that you've experienced, Lana?
Absolutely. Look, for me, spirituality has always been an individual path or journey. It's got nothing to do with religion, really. I mean, organized religion is very separate to spirituality itself, because spirituality really is just about us as an individual, looking at our soul or our inner self, our higher self, our subconscious, as Carl Jung's, loved to explore. So, there's a psychological aspect to that as well, which, I say on my website, science and spirituality are two sides of the same coin to me. I see it as a mirror. Psychology and spirituality are almost mirror images of each other. It's just a different way to describe it, really. So that sort of knowledge of self, that having that trust in ourselves, that's a huge journey, and that's a very spiritual one. I guess it's just maybe we don't always think of it that way, but it's absolutely a very individual, unique experience, definitely.
I think when people, go through some particularly troubling or challenging times in their life, it is really when they do start to look inwards. I know that was my experience, and Mel, you and I have talked about this a lot. That was your experience as well, wasn't it?
Yeah. It's different for me. I like Lana, I've been spiritual from a very young age. I've had spiritual experiences, and that was the question I was going to ask you before, Lana. I think a lot of people recall spiritual experiences when they're a kid, but then they grow up and they get into their analytical mind, and they start, trying to. And I think that's the key. That's always been with me, that spirituality, and it's evolved into a lot more than that. Like I went right into looking at it. But I do think it's interesting, particularly when you notice 3 or 4 year olds, they're still really like the conversations they have when adults aren't around, and that it's all very, it's like, where did that come from? Like it's confirmed to me that they, it's particularly young kids are really tapped into that. And then of course through the schooling system and over time, we lose connection with that. And I just wonder how it stays with some people, and then how does it change to being an atheist, Sean? Like, how did that, because I'm sure that as a kid you had those experiences in nature and
yeah, absolutely. I think it's conditioning, Mel.
Yeah.
For me, it was going to a Christian school, and even though my family weren't really religious, it was a good school, so I went there. And I don't begrudge the Catholic system at all. I really enjoyed my time at school, but I think it's just for me, I think it's a conditioning thing. You just sort of brought up to think, well, like, there's the organized religions, and that's what spirituality is. So if you don't really want to follow that path, then you're atheistic. So, I mean, that's what I felt I was for pretty much most of my adult life, apart from, I had my own problems and went through some very, very trying and testing times. And part of that healing journey for me was discovering my spirituality. And that's so, I agree with Lana. It's got nothing to do with religion for me at all. It's really about my own self and my own spirit, I guess.
Absolutely.
I want to ask you, I remember when I started coaching in the government when I was 25, and I had to, part of my role, because I was at a really highly stressful, dealing with child separation and divorce, and I had to teach people self-awareness, how to develop self-awareness. And it was quite incredible to me to learn that a lot of people don't have internal dialogue, or they don't reflect on what's things that happen to them, or understand what self-awareness is. And I think that it's hard to have a path to spirituality if you're not aware of how your internal monologue and I found that really interesting when I was younger. I could not believe it. I was like, oh my God, I'm always
definitely.
Yeah. So what have you come across that in your practice or in your field?
Absolutely. All the time. They're the people who are really disconnected from themselves. They sort of tend to have a victim mentality, and why is this happening to me over and over and over again? And it's, again, that lack of self-awareness and the role that they play in that. Now, that being said, we all do that, myself
Absolutely.
included.
Absolutely.
I'm not preaching. I do the same thing, but I always sort of come back to myself and go, well, hang on a sec, have we done this before? Are we doing something, So it is that sort of, I constantly remind myself of things that I tell my clients as well. I'm human. I'm not perfect. I'm definitely human. So, but again, it comes back to that level of self-awareness that we sort of have to be mindful of ourselves, our thoughts, our behaviors. What are we doing? What are we repeating? All those sorts of things. So, that's a huge part of mental health. I see that all the time in that, the counselling in the mental health industry. It's interesting with tarot and people that are spiritual, probably a little bit less, because they're coming to me with that already with that open mind.
Yeah, and they're probably already tapped into themselves.
Yeah, that's right. And they're actively seeking the answers and knowing that they play a big role in that. So you're kind of halfway there, which is great, but I definitely have seen, I think we all do it to a degree, some more than others, I suppose.
Yeah, Lana, I mean, that's the initial thought of when you're going through those troubling periods. It's like, well, why is this happening to me? What have I done to deserve this? And and until I got over that phase, I wasn't getting better.
Yeah.
And so do you think that you're seeing that a little bit more over the last couple of years? I mean, it's been a challenging time for almost everyone, really, in one level or another. Have you seen more of that?
Look, it's hard to say. It's sort of yes and no. It's almost like people have been divided into two groups almost. There's the ones that have become really insular and just like, okay, reality, I can't handle reality. Like, it's not pleasant, so I don't entirely blame them. But it's almost like you go one way or the other. It's like everything's fine, everything's how it should be, and just like completely put the blinkers on. Like, I can't sort of process. There's no self-awareness, so it's sort of that cognitive dissonance. And that really threatens that ego and that sense of self. So we can have that, or, and they're really, really struggling. Or you have the ones, that sort of go, hey, hang on, something's not right here. And it's really just, for me, it was a huge another level of waking up, awakening in myself and going, well, hang on, this isn't right. And looking at the role that I play in the world and my own life and my family and what impact I have. So really just layers and layers and layers, and it's been evolving for the past few years. So yeah, it's hard to answer that because I see both.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Lana, I think the ongoing...
And it's okay. It's okay. Everyone's on their own journey. So it's not right or wrong either.
I think the difference this time that I'm seeing is that, for a long time now, we've been talking about how it's necessary to talk about your trauma and, on a collective as well. However, there's complete silence. And there's not the only one who thinks this around what has happened in the last 3 years and the control of governments. And that silence to me is concerning because where it ends up, right? Like at the end, it's shame, it's trauma internalized in the body.
Absolutely.
Messed up. Like if we don't start talking, because every single day there's a new crisis and it's almost laughable in a way now, like, and
it is
totally switched off because already it's so I'm not sure how do we mend humanity without talking about the control.
Right. Well, I think first of all we need to acknowledge what's happening and that if it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't.
Yeah.
So again, back to spirituality, trusting your instinct, trust your intuition, trust what's right in front of your face. It's almost like we've been gaslit. It's like an abusive ex that says, hey, this isn't reality. This is reality. What I'm telling you, that gaslighting, oh, that's not true. Tell you not to believe yourself, really. It's funny, my partner showed me yesterday a news article that said, apparently now global warming is causing heart attacks. Well, that's a good one. They're getting really creative now. So it's like, there's the big elephant in the room. It's been there for a while now. And I think it's up to the individual. How you asked the question, how do we heal? I think we have to start with ourselves. As that old saying, start local. Yeah. Start with your own community. But I think we have to start with ourselves first, because if we're not sort of aligned or in balance, or if we're disconnected from ourselves, again, back to that spirituality, then how are we going to mend? How are we going to heal anyone else or the world?
Boundaries so that the control, I guess, mechanisms don't happen. I think it's always a lot of the time issues with boundaries. That's people struggle with that in all areas of their life. But I think that's manifested into a great big beast, and that also needs to be part of the conversation. Yeah, like always, like you
there's
said.
been a lot of trauma. Yeah, a lot of trauma and a lot of healing that's yet to take place, I think, over what's happened to us all over the past few years. And I think it's only probably starting to dawn on us now. Again, everyone's on their different stage or journey. That's okay. We all see it differently. I've seen a lot of trauma. I've seen it really affect people's mental health. That I've been in that industry for years, and the past few years it's just been unbelievable. Really, really sad. Especially people who are, institutionalized, or people who are, needing mental health support on a daily or 24-hour basis, which is a job that I used to do as well. And that was when COVID really hit, when it really first hit. And so people that are already struggling, that already need support just to survive every day, man, they really felt it. Children, I watched my own children start developing anxiety and getting depressed because they weren't allowed outside. They couldn't see their friends, and not really understanding why. And I can't give them a good answer because I don't get it either. It doesn't make sense. We're being told a lot of things that I'm not necessarily seeing evidence of. Yeah. And I'm just told to believe it. It doesn't feel right. So again, I think it's back to trusting ourselves. We have to get back to that individual place where we go, hey, if something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't.
Yeah, and so Melanie and I, we did an end of year episode, not last year, but the year before. And we actually spoke even back then. That was, well over 12 months ago, 18 months ago, where we were saying that there was that period of time where you just didn't know what the information was, because one moment we're being told one thing, the next moment it was another thing. Then this information was correct, and then that information was not correct. We're also told that, trust the science, but we've got to the stage where we've got the science in Australia is totally different to what the scientists are saying in Sweden or the UK. So what is right? Well, we don't know. So there's so much confusion.
There was a lot of conflicting information, and
there's a lot of conflicting information.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that you're right. I mean, so what you need to do is to look within and be able to sort of find that inner strength, find that that inner voice that's guiding your intuition, that a lot of people have struggled with.
Definitely. I think that's society's a big part of that as well. We have been, over decades, we've become really disconnected from ourselves. And if we are spiritual, if we have more faith, or we talk about intuition or trusting ourselves, we're mocked or laughed at, which is crazy.
Lana, how do you start trusting
it's good to see.
when you may have grown up in a household where you didn't feel safe, or where you didn't learn about trust? But I think a lot of this comes down to trusting oneself. But what does that actually look like, and how does someone practically implement that if they particularly didn't grow up in a household that to happen?
That's a good question. I think it's definitely an individual thing. You guys mentioned meditation, which I'm working at and getting better at. I kind of suck at it because I find it really hard to switch my mind off, which is ironic because I read tarot and I'll do all that thing. But I'm so used to receiving, like I'm a receiver, and I'm so used to having all these messages come in. It is hard to sort of switch it off for me. So it's something I'm practicing. That being said, it is that, as you mentioned, Sean, that inner voice. I think meditation, if people can do that, I think that's a really wonderful place to start. But even on a really simple level to begin with, when we are doubting ourselves, we probably do this numerous times a day where we go, we make a decision or a choice about something, and then we question ourselves.
Yes.
Or maybe, we have that self-doubt, the little voice comes back in, says, oh no, I'm probably wrong, or I'm going to, we kind of talk ourselves down. We belittle ourselves.
It's too hard,
right.
It's too difficult.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we can sort of change the dialogue, the internal dialogue there, and go, well, hang on, why? Is that true? Really, question ourselves. And not in a self-doubting way, but where are these doubts coming from? Almost be our own counselors, if you will. So why am I having that thought? Why am I doubting myself? What feels right? And our bodies will tell us. It's amazing. Our bodies will actually tell us. If something feels good, we feel relaxed, we feel joy, we feel happy. If something doesn't feel right, our minds can talk us into a lot of stuff. But if you've got that niggling little feeling in your gut that says, don't do it, you should probably listen to that. So our bodies are actually, very connected. Our bodies know what's going on, but we've been conditioned, or we've learned to doubt ourselves, to not trust ourselves or our bodies that literally will tell us every day. So it's practice. It definitely takes practice. It's not just going to happen overnight. It's something that, we all need to work on.
So what's some of the things that you could suggest on how to practice that?
Well, again, I'll go to the internal dialogue, practice having conversations with yourself. When you hear that little inner critic, that self-doubt creep in, sit down with it. Don't try and push it away, or, I'm all about confronting things. And that if you have that little voice that says, oh, I can't do it, why? Really, really question that voice. Almost sit down and have a conversation with it. That's one thing that I do that I find is really, really helpful. Another way would be, like as you guys do, sit down in silence, meditation. That can take practice as well. Grounding yourself. It takes time, it takes practice. But it really is about changing that internal dialogue. I think number one, I think that's where we have to start.
Yeah, and one of the things that I found too is that sometimes you don't have to make a decision straight away, or you don't have to react straight away. And I think, I've always been pretty decisive, and I've always really trusted my intuition, actually. It's always been, in fact, the times where I've been at my worst is when I haven't trusted it. And I've always gone, I knew I shouldn't have done that.
Right. We all say that, don't we? Oh, I knew
absolutely.
it. I knew it.
Yeah.
But we didn't listen.
Well, we didn't listen, or I reacted too quickly. And so for me, sometimes it's just about saying, all right, well, I'm just going to kind of meditate on that for a bit, or go for a walk, go for a little bushwalk, go for a swim, go, go out on the boat, whatever it is, little bit of nature.
Nature's
just so I can sort of just
favorite.
mull that over a little bit. Absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah.
And sometimes
grounding in nature is such a powerful tool as well, Sean. Yeah.
Nature is amazing, but sometimes you're getting little hints from the universe. Like at the moment, I've been wanting to write about something for a long time now, and I wake up pretty much every night at the moment, like 2 or 3 in the morning, with the whole speech written in my head. I can almost see it like in my, like writing it. It's like in my mind's eye, I guess. And it's relentless. And I know that until I do that, it's not going to go. So it's not always about like, it's all critical meditation and nature, but particularly if you're, if you do have some intuition or when messages are coming in, it's almost like your soul's knocking at the door and they're like, you need to act on this, you need to act on this, move to the next stage of,
definitely
or something, and speak up. Or
you'll find, I think the more you practice, it's so funny, Mel, because I have, premonitions, and dreaming is a huge part of my spirituality, I guess, because I've had premonitions, I've had really out there stuff come true, like over the years, some really horrible stuff too, unfortunately. But yeah, dreaming's always been a huge one for me. And I think if you can open up that doorway, if you really practice and really allow yourself to strengthen your intuition, you'll be amazed. The subconscious mind is just incredible. And the messages that come through, I think I told my partner about something. I woke up and went, oh, if I remember it, it's a message. That's my thing. So I'm like, okay, I've got to tell you something. It made absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. No sense. I had no even know what I was talking about. He went, oh, okay. He said, I better write that down. Said, you got to write this down. You need to know this. They told me to tell you. So we'll see in a few months if it, what happens. It made no sense to me. It's so funny, but they told me to tell him. So it's funny how it works, but everyone's different. Everyone has a different experience, I guess, with that. But I love that, Mel. I'm very similar. It's like your subconscious, your soul will be knocking at the door going, come on, girl, let's get to work.
I think a lot of it too is that resistance to change. That's where, intuition for me has always played a really strong part, is that, something's either not right or you want to make a change, you want to do something else, but it's that fear. And usually in my experience and from talking to other people, that fear comes from that conditioning. It's a sense of identity. It's, well, what are other people going to think if I make this change or make this choice? For me, that's where I really rely on that intuition and my spiritual self to sort of say, well, who cares what other people think? That's the hardest bit.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah.
That resistance where things are going in a certain direction. It's going to change on you anyway, eventually.
Yeah. And it's funny, I can be a real stick in the mud sometimes. I'm not a big fan of change. I've learned to embrace it in more recent years. But oh boy, I'd be happy. I'll stay in my comfort zone and just not move, not change, not go anywhere. But the universe has a way of kicking you in the butt when it needs to. And a lot of big changes in my life have been forced on me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's been for the better, but man, I needed to kick up the backside to get there sometimes. So I've learned to embrace it. And I've learned to worry less about what people think of me and focus more on what do I think of me. I'm the one that has to, go to sleep every night and look at myself in the mirror every day. Can I live with what I'm doing? So at the end of the day, the only person I've got to answer to is myself.
It's funny, isn't it? It should be the easiest thing, but it's not. It's actually, for me, it's always the hardest thing. I'm always worried about what other people think. Usually for me, I'm either pretty hard on myself or I'm pretty good on myself. But it's always that conditioning of identity, and I've talked about this over many episodes, that's the problem. It's half the time you're sort of fighting against your own self and your own intuition because you're worried about what that's going to mean to your identity and what other people think.
And it's subconscious too. That's what makes it so difficult, because this stuff, it's like back to psychology. It is childhood. It is conditioning from the day we're born, and it's subconscious. It's so deeply ingrained that it takes a lot of hard work to change that. But I think that self-awareness, and even the fact that you say that, that's like you're halfway there. That's the I'd say it's the first step. But I think if you have that, if you're that open-minded and you're already willing and you want it enough, then you're halfway there.
Yeah.
Well, I think the last few years also, like I know, and you guys would know people like this too, and they tend to be like in their 60s, 50s and 60s, who've literally grown up in the same suburb, lived now still in the same suburb, lived in the same house, married someone from high school, been in the same job. There are people who've lived like that. So I think the last few years I would have found would be quite shocking to them, but those people I know in that situations actually haven't changed much, like in terms of internal. They just, that was like, okay, well, this is happening, like it was some external event. So I've always used to beat myself up about, because like you, Lana, I have to, like, if I don't listen to my intuition, it just comes along. This is it. You're changing.
Oh yeah.
And I try to recognize it now, but there are a lot of people who seemingly have gone through life, seemingly with no, or just actually make themselves like so stable that chaos is unlikely to find them. But yeah, I've often wondered about that. Is that just some people's life path? Everyone has a different life path, but there are some people who resist change so much that their lives literally don't look much different from their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s and 60s. Like I just don't know how that happens.
My big question there is, are they happy?
Yeah. And eventually something's going to happen.
Yeah.
You can't avoid that change. Either their husband or their wife or their loved ones are going to die or get sick, or they may struggle with it in a financial situation. They might have their career change because of a technological advancement. Eventually they're going to have to deal with it. And I mean, at the moment, everything's changing so fast. I mean, I can't remember a period of time where things have changed so rapidly. I just think that being able to deal with change, being able to adapt to challenging situations is going to be so vital for the future.
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster the past few years, and I think it's really been a case of sink or swim for a lot of people. Yeah, really showing us what we're made of in a lot of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, some people have been able to get through, working from home relatively unscathed. And other people have had to make radical changes just to survive. But I mean, there's big changes coming. I mean, for all those people that are able to work from home, that those jobs are going to be under threat soon anyway, because a lot of that stuff's just going to be done by AI. So they're going to have to deal with that change soon. So there's the change is rapid, and whether people have sort of gone through the last couple of years relatively unscathed, well, there's some challenging years ahead. So
yeah, definitely.
It's and things geopolitically are probably the most unstable in our lifetimes. Maybe not our grandparents, if we're lucky to have them alive, but definitely our lifetimes, we've never seen a more challenging environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can't imagine my grandparents, God bless them, they've passed away years ago, but I can't imagine them dealing with what we've been through in the past few years very well,
Yeah, I lost my 96-year-old pop in June 2020, and it was like, you can't hug him at the end and all this sort of stuff, right? So it was all, but you know what, there was a part of me that was, because he wanted to go, he kept saying he's been wanting to go for years, and
he's ready.
I'm just glad that it didn't, it was 2020 and not, there was a part of me that just wanted, because he'd lived all this life, and he was very confused in the end. He's like, why can't I hug my, because he was slipping in and out.
Yeah.
And, it was really tough. So, but was just going back to kids, it was in the ABC today that 1 in 5 children during the lockdowns, particularly in Victoria, didn't actually have a safe place at home, and their parents were working from home, and they were in these toxic, violent households. And, not only, I mean, that's a big stat, 1 in 5, and there is a big crisis in Victoria with mental health, particularly everywhere, but Victoria.
They got hit really hard. Yeah.
And so how do we help children heal and move through the next phase if parents haven't had an opportunity, like from collective?
That's a good question, Mel. I'll be honest, I don't have a definitive answer for that. Like, I think that's something that I'll definitely, doing what I do for a living, it's something I feel really passionately, really strongly about, and it's something I'll continue probably over the next few years, is figuring out how to do that, because we are limited. I work from home myself at the moment. Hopefully that changes soon, but yeah, it's really challenging. It's really challenging. I think, first of all, giving them access. I do telehealth with my counselling practice. So giving them access, and again, that can be tricky sometimes if they're in a certain environment at home where they're not easily able to get access to telehealth. But, giving them a space where they're safe, that they can talk about it. I think, again, as was mentioned before, spirituality, it doesn't necessarily have to come into it, but I think that sort of acceptance, that open-minded mentality, rather than just doing the clinical diagnosis sort of routine, I think that needs to change. I think a lot of things need to change, but like I said, I don't have all the answers, but I'm certainly going to do my best to find some in the coming years with what I do.
I found this like oracle card deck called Because I Love Myself, and it was perfect for teenagers. I was giving them out to my nieces, and I had a couple of clients, teenage girls in Victoria, I was talking to and coaching through, and they were so open to that. And it was just putting up a vision board and affirmations and oracle cards that outside of mental health, telehealth and all of that also provided great relief, even just that gateway into spirituality and beautiful imagery on those cards. And so I think the combination, exactly what you do is to me what will
definitely
be healing, like combining, being open to spirituality and the tools that are used with that. And for those who are still more traditional, then
absolutely look, I don't want to sort of come across as like I'm forcing it and this is the answer for everybody, because it's definitely not. But oh gosh, yes, like when I was a teenager, I absolutely, like I said, I've always been spiritual, but man, I loved, I got onto all the witchy little things, and nothing negative. I was never drawn to the dark or the negative, so Satan, and nothing, never appealed to me at all, never has, never will. It's always been, the good, do things for good. But I've always loved that. And to me, it was so empowering and so calming, I guess, in when I had those, I think you mentioned, Sean, during moments of crisis in our lives, that tends to be when I've got the most spiritual connection and really just gone, oh, wow, like it's me and that's it. Like, oh my God. So it really, I was forced to sort of reconnect with myself and that intuition, that trust, because man, I hit rock bottom, at some points in life, as we all do. And that's definitely when I've been at my most spiritual, because it's just, that connection comes back in. It's like, hey, we're here, we've got you. I think there's another deck, Mel, called The Universe Has Your Back. And it absolutely does. It really, really does. We've just got to trust that. And that's a big, big, big ask sometimes, to have trust, unwavering trust in ourselves as part of the universe. Man, I could go on.
So, Lana, you don't have to tell us what led to those rock bottoms if you're not comfortable. But I'd love to know what you did to help get yourself out.
Look, I had, my first 2 children, the relationship broke down with their father.
Right.
Unfortunately, there was a bit of domestic violence and not a fun time at all. And so, that was a very, very tough time for me. I became a single mother. I was going through extreme financial hardship, going through all the emotions that came with that, and all the, all those huge changes. And also, the fear that, someone who's a perpetrator of domestic violence might come back and continue to be abusive, or which they did in any way they could. Maybe not physically, but certainly mentally and financially. So that was definitely a big crisis time in my life. I was also finishing my psychology degree at the time. So, man, that was an interesting time for me,
Yeah.
but also very healing at the same time. And that was when I really, really, really connected back into my spirituality, and I started doing my tarot again. I do like to practice I guess what you could call magic. You could call it manifestation. You could call it accessing the quantum field, if you want to get sciencey about it. All the same thing. Same thing.
Can you explain that a little bit more?
Sure. So accessing it's, oh man, this could go for a really long time.
That's okay.
I'll try and keep it simple.
Yeah, keep it simple, but I'd love to know more.
Look, I'll give you an example. So back to, that sort of crisis period of time, I started to do magic again. And for me, what magic is, and it's never about, I could go back and, there's a sort of a Wiccan sort of way of doing it. I'm a solitary practitioner. I don't subscribe to any sort of one way of doing things or another, or any groups or anything like that. I'm not into that. I just do my own thing. And so it's never about harming anyone, or, you don't go against someone's free will, any of those. There's universal laws that I've always respected, and I continue to do so. But this was about protection. I had to protect myself, my children, my house, so I did some little things. I accessed the quantum field, and I simply asked God or the universe. I asked Spirit, whatever you want to call it. There's many different names. And I access that. You can use tools to help you, but really it's just you. You are the tool. So again, you can easily access that within your meditation practice as well, Sean. I think you probably already have done that.
Yeah.
If you're doing it consistently, yeah. And so really once you get into that state of mind, it's amazing. It's amazing what you can do. And there are many different ways to do it, but meditation is a wonderful one to do. Yeah.
Do you think that it also...
And it works. It works.
Yeah, right. And do you think that it also just makes you hyper aware of what you require at the time?
Yes. So you mean the crisis or the spirituality, or
the affirmations? The
affirmations.
Yeah, using that as a tool. I mean, I have done that in my meditation.
Yeah.
And so for me, where that's been successful has meant that it just makes me aware of it all day. Like if I'm really trying to work through something, I'm really trying to make something a reality, manifest something.
Yeah.
And it means that for me, it just means that I'm hyper aware of what is around me that gives me that opportunity.
Well, you're accessing your subconscious.
Right.
So the subconscious loves repetition. So you can go, this is again with, a lot of psychologists did this, 20, 50 years ago with conditioning, Pavlov's dog. There's so many psychological experiments out there that are a great example of this, of conditioning the subconscious mind. And that's essentially what we're doing. And because we are part of the quantum universe, the quantum field, it's sort of like we're a kid in a candy store sometimes. But yeah, that being said, if your subconscious is telling you, you might think you want something, but your subconscious knows better, you won't get it.
Right.
And it's funny because I've been playing around with this for years, like a kid. I'm like, hey, let's have it's a bit of fun, see what I can make happen. And for me, moving is a great example. I've moved house several times in the past 4 or 5 years, and always bigger. I'm always leveling up. So I started off in a very small house with my 2 daughters. I then made my partner move to a bigger house, and then I said, yeah, next I want to move to the mountains. I really want to move to the mountains. And that was about 2 years ago, in the midst of the crazy circus that we were all enduring. I went, that's it, I'm out of here. I want to go to the mountains. I want a beautiful big house in the mountains. 2 years later, here I am. I just had it in here, and it was so I just knew. I said, I'm going to go out there. It's happened. And to the point where I believed it, my subconscious believed it, and it became my reality. So it can take a while. It can happen like that. It can take years. But yeah, it is really conditioning the subconscious mind. And if you want it and you believe in it, and you believe in yourself, yeah, you'll get it.
I think there is divine timing too. Like, is it,
Yeah.
law of attraction really hurt the movement a bit, where people thought they could instantly manifest something and disregarding the subconscious program. But I also think, obviously, you know, if you're wanting to meet a partner, then they also have to be aligned with that and what's going on for them. It's not like you can someone appear at the door. So I think
that's right.
Hurt that a bit. But
and you've got to be ready for it. If you're not ready for it, it's not going to.
You've got to trust that it's coming. Like for me, like when I met Aaron, I was 40. I thought it was never coming. I'd never lived with a man. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to be, you know, but I actually right deep down, I knew that I would
get a couple of cats.
But there was a real deep part of me that knew, but I just didn't trust the timing. Like it was going to happen. And then when it happened, then I realized that a lot of things had to happen before that could happen. And also the same for Aaron. Like we've got these, you know, you don't
absolutely
singularity. Like if you're trying to manifest, and even with homes, I've been the same as you, manifesting where I want to live, but you also get things that has to be available, that property come up, then it's got to be, so it's all just timing, but
timing, definitely
putting your desires out.
But it also doesn't come without work, does it? I mean, that's the other thing, you know, if you just sort of say, well, you know, I want, you know, $200,000 in my bank next year. And that'd be great. We're all going to, that's not what we can all just do that. And I really believe that that's going to happen. Right. You know, like, you know, you've got to be able to sort of say, well, okay, well, I want to manifest whatever it is, whether it's a new house or it's a, you know, a new career or it's a new place to live or it's a change in environment. Like you can't just sort of expect that it's going to happen. Like you still got to kind of look around for you know, whatever those opportunities are. Like Mel and I talk about it with this podcast all the time. Like we sort of spoke about, well, how are we going to make this happen? What are we going to do? Where are we going to get guests, or where are we going to get, how are we going to get it to the next level? We'll say, oh, okay, well, let's manifest. Well, okay, so it's almost like we're not really having a joke about it. We're kind of serious about it, but also, okay, well, I'm going to research this. I'm going to look into this aspect of things, and things
got to put the work in.
You've got to kind of put the work together, and then all of a sudden, okay, that's what we're going to do.
And there's a law, I can't remember, it's similar to balance. So you get, it's about give and take. So if you want something, you've got to give something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's true of life in general, you know. But yeah, that's definitely true. I have definitely found that to work and make things happen a lot faster. If I give something, you know, if I give an offering or I give something for free, I say, I really want some more clients or something, I'll go and do a free webinar, or I'll go and do something for free. You know, I'll offer my services and put myself out there. Once I do that, the universe will pay me in kind.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a story of my experience a couple of years ago. I got a small, you know, garden maintenance, landscape and garden maintenance business. And it was just sort of getting to the stage where it was just too much for me on my own. I needed some help. And I thought to myself, the young guy across the road, I'm sure he's just about to finish school. I'm pretty sure he'll go to university. It'd be the ideal job for him. And that was probably in, you know, halfway through the year that I thought that. And then so a couple of months later, he was out shooting hoops across the street. So me in my mid-40s went over and said, hey, Harry, let me have a shot. So I played a bit of basketball with him and I said, when do you finish school? And he said, oh, yeah, I finish in about a month's time. And I said, are you going to uni? And he said, yeah, I'm going to go to uni. I don't start till March. And I said, oh, are you going to get a job or anything like that? He said, yeah, I've just applied for a job at Aldi and, but I don't really want to work in retail. I want to just sort of do something physical and active. And I said, do you want to come and work for me? And he said, oh, that'd be great. And he said, when can I start? And I said, well, give me a call when you finish school. Well, he rang me the day he finished school. He said, I'm ready to start today.
Yeah.
And that just came from me sort of thinking, that'd be a really good job for him. And I did think, it'd be and it is. It's the ideal job. While he's at uni, he's available in my peak season. When he goes back to uni, he just wants to do 1 or 2 days a week, and I'm a bit quiet. It's just perfect. And that happened by me just putting it out there,
right?
Thinking.
I wonder what he was manifesting. Maybe he was manifesting that job too, Sean.
Probably saying, "Well, I don't want to work in retail. I want to do something physical," because he's an active sort of athletic kind of guy. He's pretty shy and quiet. Doesn't like talking to people much. He only has to talk to me, really. So he probably was, you know. And that's an example of how that worked for me.
Yeah, perfect. I love that. Well, I find that, you know, it's funny, like life will throw these little connections at you just at the right time.
Lana, we've been on for a while. To wrap it up, what's your top 3 tips to develop your own spiritual self, your sense of your inner knowing, or the
top 3 tips? Oh, the pressure. Okay, first one, the trust. We've got to have the trust. So going back into that, you know, practicing intuition, we've got to trust ourselves and the universe or God, spirit, like I said, whatever you want to call it. Even if you do subscribe to religion, you know, I want to mention that too. Like I do respect all religions and all beliefs and all spiritual things that people do, you know. As long as you have that trust, you have that faith, and you're doing good things in the world, I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
But you've got to trust yourself first. That's number 1. Number 2, I'd say self-awareness, self-work. You know, Sean, we were talking earlier about, you know, that little niggling voice and the self-doubt and you know, rewording the dialogue that we have. Because that, you know, I said trust is number 1, but it's really hard to sort of reprogram that subconscious mind. So I think if you can look into that, you know, do some research. It's easily accessible to everyone these days, which is brilliant. But do some research.
Don't trust everything that you're told.
No, be discerning. Use your own mind. You have one, use it. Don't, you know, don't do the research, but don't rely on external sources for validation.
Yes.
Back to self-trust again. But you have to be discerning. And if you're not sure, sit on it. Like you said, Sean, come back to it later. It's okay. You don't have to have all the answers. I certainly don't. But, you know, keep practicing, keep doing it. And number 3, I wouldn't be a green lady, Lana, if I didn't say nature. That's why I'm the green lady, because it's
it comes through in all of our episodes, Lana.
Yeah, really. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. But yeah, nature's such a huge, huge part of spirituality for me. Yeah. And connecting to, you know, it grounds you immediately. You could be having a stressful day, you go outside, put your feet on the ground, in the grass, be near the trees, and man, I feel amazing. You feel good.
Do you see faces in trees?
Pardon?
Do you see faces in trees?
Oh, yes.
And
rocks and water everywhere. Oh, I talk to them too. I love them. I love trees. I'm mad.
Well, hey, there's a lot of research about talking to plants. I'm a gardener. And music.
There is. They make music.
Yeah, well,
They make beautiful music. Yeah. There's a lot of interesting stuff out there that, you know, do some research, and man, you'll find some amazing, incredible stuff out there. And it's all science-backed too, you know, a lot of it, which is fantastic. Finally, you know. Yes.
Well, I just read this amazing article about the interconnectedness of trees and the
whole network.
The communication is being researched, especially around mushrooms.
Mushrooms, yes. The mycelium network. Oh my goodness. That's incredible.
If people want to have a look into that, we should put a couple of links on our
I highly Instagram. Recommend doing that. It's incredible.
It's fascinating. And it is fascinating how, you know, those networks are connected. And you know, our previous guest was talking about, you know, the interconnectedness of nature, how she found the interconnectedness with nature. And she said, oh, you know, it might sound a little bit crazy, but it's actually not. It's totally real.
Absolutely is.
You know, it is one giant ecosystem, and us as humans, part of our problem.
Yeah.
Modern society is that we're so disconnected from that. Whereas really we're part of it.
We're part of it. And it heals us. It gives us so many things. It feeds us, it nourishes us, it protects us, it gives us shelter. It speaks to us, it loves us. We got to love it back.
Yeah. Absolutely. Hey, listen, we could talk all day easily.
Oh, yeah.
And this has really been fascinating, and probably one of our more uplifting episodes, Lana. So thanks so much. But what we do, even though we've talked about everything really positively today, and I've really enjoyed it, but what we do finish up with is all of our guests, we ask, what's their hopes for the future? So what is it for you, Lana? What are you hoping for the future?
Look, Sean, I think at the moment, you know, for myself personally, but also for everyone in the world, after the rough years that we've had, I think it's time to start healing, you know, and spirituality hopefully is a beautiful part of that. And, you know, let's do it. Let's work together and let's trust ourselves more. Let's love each other more and ourselves and work on healing. So I think life is beautiful. The world is a beautiful place. Let's enjoy it.
Well, that's a great way to end, Lana. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lana. It's a beautiful ending.
Thanks, guys.
Well, thanks so much for listening, Lana. It's been a real pleasure. Just how can people connect with you, Lana? Is there a way that, you know, people can contact you or get in contact with you?
So they can go onto my website. It's greenlady.com.au. And I'm on Instagram as well, Green Lady Tarot. Okay,
so follow Lana if you want to get some more information on spirituality and tarot. I follow your page, Lana. I always find it really fascinating. So, and I know that you're a big supporter of our show. So thanks so much. Thanks, Melanie, Mark. Thanks again. Thanks for finding Lana, another great guest. But hey, look, we just like to let everyone know again that we're developing our balanced brain journal. So a lot of the things that we discussed today, you can actually start to journal out. Mel, do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
So it's like a journal, a wellness journal, but it covers the physical, the mental, the spiritual, and the emotional. And it'll just have prompts and tips in there and ways of pages for journaling and just prompts that will prompt journaling and ways to develop intuition.
Yep.
Lots of tips in there. So
ways to develop self-awareness.
That's pretty much will be, I guess, the underlying basis of it, because every tool in that journal will help towards that. So I think that's probably the overriding thing, is developing self-awareness and insight.
Yeah, so keep an eye out on our Instagram page. We'll also have a website up soon where you'll be able to download our wellness journal, so the Balanced Brain Wellness Journal. So keep an eye out for it. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Lana, thanks again.
Thank you very much,
Great to meet you. Thanks, Melanie.
Thank you,
Good to see you again. Thanks, everyone. See you again soon.